we've talked so much about talent. You've traveled everywhere across the world to bring up talent and get them literally from zero. What are the core elements that are essential to transform raw potential talent into elite performers?
I'll answer that question, but first I have to say how excited and what a dream it is to be here in Rwanda and participate in this event. It's for a 13-year-old kid from Lansing, Michigan, who grew up with an idol, and that idol was Magic Johnson, and my older brother, Jay Vincent, who both went to Michigan State, and I was determined, I'm gonna go to Michigan State too. And then they both left and went to the NBA. Magic went to the Lakers, and my brother went to the Mavericks. And I was determined, I'm gonna go to the NBA too. So I got to the Boston Celtics, and it really started from having a dream to follow some people who had been successful and were doing something that I thought was amazing. So to go on and have a chance to play in the NBA, which is just an amazing organization, all of the friends and all of the coaches and all of the fans that you get a chance to meet, and then to leave that and start coaching, and have a chance to come to South Africa in '99 and connect with Amadou and Kim and a lot of the NBA family, and then to now be here 20-something years later and see what's going on. I just have to take 30 seconds to say I'm just proud to be here and proud to be with everybody else in this panel. Now, what was your question?
You can ask as many times. Well, I was talking about talent. You talked about a 13-year-old, but really coaching. Your coaching career started in Europe, if I know, and obviously you were technical director for the BAL Combine early this year. But how do we transform raw talent on the African continent to athletic performance on the biggest stages of the world?
So I heard a couple of the panelists talk about it. It starts with infrastructure. It starts with coaching. It starts with leagues, like what's being built now. Because all of these things provide hope and dreams to kids that they can actually make it to the top. So it's exciting to see that a lot of those things are starting to be in place now. Last time I was here in South Africa, we didn't have the talent that we have today. And we still don't have the talent that some of the other African countries have, just because they have more leagues and they have more competition. But I'm excited to be working with South Africa and seeing that the coaches are getting better, the fundamentals are getting better. We're still trying to grow a proper pro league, but there's a lot of great things happening in South Africa and around the continent.
All right. Thank you so much for that. George, you've played at the most elite level, I mean, in the NBA. Every basketball player across the world wants to play in the NBA. But what helped shape your development to transition from college basketball to professional basketball?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's two things, if I can point them out. I would say humility and also a combination of ambition. I was ambitious, obviously. I wanted to be a very good player. I wanted to be the best, but I also had, because of my upbringing through basketball, I had a high level of humility as well, and I understood that I wasn't as good as I needed to be to get to where I wanted to go. So because of that, I asked a lot of questions. I saw guys doing the things that I wanted to do in this industry, and with me being in college, being around coaches who had connections, I would ask them, hey, what was this guy like? You know, when he was in my grade or my class, what was he doing? You know, and then when I got to the NBA, I was asking questions. So, you know, that's what it was for me, those two things. And also just the ambition, right? The work. Obviously, I understood that, you know, now that I'm asking these questions and they're giving me the answers, now it's time for me to put in that work and to go out there and you know, get in the gym. And that's where I developed my discipline. Because going back to that humility, I asked my coach, Jean Prelo, one of the assistant coaches when I was at Colorado, I said, hey, you know, what is something that I can do to be a better basketball player? He's like, well, you need to shoot the ball better. And I said, okay. And he gave me a drill. And it was just a simple drill. Every day, put 15 minutes on the clock after practice. And we started with making 7 out of 10 from 5 spots. And he told me, you stay with 7 out of 10 until you can get 2 days in a row where you can finish the drill with time left on the clock. And so after the months and the semesters went by, I graduated to 8 out of 10, and to 9 out of 10. And I'm still on 9 out of 10. But that's what it was. And I saw that extra 15 minutes. Within those 15 minutes, and I had 2 rebounders under the basket for me, I probably got up an extra, 300 to 400 shots right there in 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. And that 400, that's one day. You multiply that by 7 for the week, and that's just those extra work. And you multiply that by 4 for the month, and then 12 for the year. Those are the extra time and the extra shots that I got over my peers that separated me. And next thing I know, I'm getting a call saying, hey, there's teams in the NBA looking at you. And so that came from the humility. Hey, I understood that I wasn't as good as I needed to be. I asked the question, and then also that ambition. Hey, putting in that work, being disciplined. Because there was times after practice where Coach dogged us out. I wasn't trying to go out there and shoot for 15 minutes, but I had to remind myself, what did you say that you wanted to do? Who did you say you wanted to be like? Where are the places that you're trying to go? And it wasn't about my feelings. It's about the discipline. And that's what it was. So I would say it's those 2 things, the humility and the ambition.
Wow, thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Now, everyone knows we call you Flo, so I'm going to say Flo.
That's good. That's good.
Flo has played for Team Great Britain, like I said earlier. So, Mr. Robbie, can you high-five the man? Robbie's from Wales. But you transitioned from being a player to an assistant coach, but also a scout for the Milwaukee Bucks, who, by the way, you have a chip, right? A ring? Did you bring it?
I didn't get one.
Okay, fine, whatever. So, as a scout for the Milwaukee Bucks, what are some of the things that you get from your playing days that you use in your scouting that are very important and that you want to see in a player?
Yeah. So the first thing I'm looking at is, just from a scouting point of view, is like functional athleticism. Things that can be immediately transferable. If they're playing in Africa, or whether they go to Europe, Asia, somewhere in the States, high school level, college, that's first. We also know on the continent, the leagues, there aren't as many, may not be as strong, especially for the youth leagues. So you're looking for things like processing speed. Mm-hmm. What kind of reads are these players making on ball, off ball? Mm-hmm. Are they cutting into space, getting into windows, things of that type of nature. Another one we're looking at is their anthropomorphic stats. So size, weight, how well do they use that? One of the things that's a great metric, I don't want to go on too much, but is what they're doing in the NBA Combine, where they test guys for lateral mobility, lateral speed, shots, and spots. So for an example, you got a guy like Kamal Malawash, right? Before the Combine, projected number 9, number 10. After the Combine, projected number 5. Because his numbers jumped off the charts. So we're looking at those kind of things. So when I'm watching games, I'm looking at what the players doing, how can they move, can this be transferred over to a high school level, over to a Division I level, that kind of thing.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And it's interesting you talk about Kaman Malwash because he played at the Olympics as a 16-year-old?
Yeah.
As a 16-year-old.
So real quick, everybody, Kaman is, obviously, he's going to go to the league, but he is a very special individual. When we had a training camp at NBA Academy for the World Cup, and they let him practice with us. He was 14, 15 at the time, and the questions he was asking, his ability to pick up plays and drills and go at our guys who are in their 20s, who are already playing pro, we knew from then, he's a special individual.
Wow, and George King talked about humility, very humble character, Kaman Malwash. Roby, let's talk about the role of media and storytelling. How do narratives in media shape the perception of African talent, teams, and sports territories globally? We already know that the BAL is broadcasting in 214 nations and territories across the world. The games are available on YouTube, on ESPN and everywhere across the world on the NBA app. But how important is it to have the right narrative after all of this work has been done?
Hi everyone, I'm very happy to be here. I think it's the 5th year that we're actually here in Rwanda with the BAL, which is also an anniversary that needs to be applauded, I think. It's been a fantastic ride, and we're so happy and honored to be part of the BAL that, you know, we're just blessed. Going to your question, Usher, I think that when we talk about narratives, we have to just be careful and understand what a narrative is. And we talk about it before we go on air. You know, what are the narratives here? What are we talking about? How are we going to break down what we're talking about regarding any of the stories that make up a game, a team, the background, the history, the coach, the scout, even and of course the players. And it's important to understand that it's important to make it positive, not to negatize. We know that media can negatize quite frequently, and we know which medias do, but I think the importance of actually talking positive in your narration of what you're doing as a broadcast journalist is essential, because sport is super important for everyone, not just to do it, but to watch it as well. And we all watch sport. You know, there's not one person here today who hasn't watched sport before and who, you know, has some kind of an interest in sport. So we need to make it a happy place. We need to make it fun. We need to make it enjoyable and to make it very positive. So all of these youngsters, you know, I mean, you can make mistakes. You can, you know, be forgiven for making a mistake, because we all make mistakes, but we can all hit back and improve and get better. You know, George touched on humility. If you're showing humility, you can understand that you need to work to become better, and we all work hard to become better. And I think the narrative of it all is to remain positive and to, you know, bring sport to life and enjoy it, because the people who are watching, they want to enjoy it just as much as those who are on the sideline, you know, like you know, Sam or George playing, or, you know, or Flo just on the side. I mean, that's super important as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you so much. I'm going to follow up with that. How can journalists help to transform local talent to global icons? And I'm going to give you a very simple example that we've seen here from Rwanda. Jean-Jacques Wilson Shobozwa, we all know? Yeah? At least we can clap for the man. We keep saying on the broadcast that he, until this point, has a world record, 14 steals in a single game. And Flo, sorry, that game was against South Sudan. February 2021 in Monastir. But Robbie, let's talk about, you know, how to get those talents and tell his story to the world. Of course, he has the longest name in the history of the BAL. We already know that. But while also picking up on upcoming stars, we've seen the BAL elevate players from the NBA Africa Academy. Luis Uvo, we saw with Kriostar, just, you know, demolish Petro de Luanda in that last game in the Sahara Conference. But how important is it that the media, not just the BAL broadcast, to jump in and tell that African story?
Well, I really think, Usher, and, you know, to everybody, I think that you really have to dig. You've got to dig for information. You've got to get the right information. Information, especially now in this modern day where there's a lot of fake information coming across, is vital to tell the right story. We can tell stories about absolutely anybody. We've got a voice. We connect. We're here for you. And we're also, you know, looking to build on what we have. Luis Uzo is a fantastic example that I was actually going to bring up, Usher, so, you know, we're on par. We do work together, so I think it's okay. And you know, for a double-double, for a guy like that to get time on the floor and to produce such an incredible performance for Kriostar and beating the defending champions is something that is just off the charts. Where he comes from, you know, I mean, the guy only picked up a basketball 3 years ago. We've got stories about him where he only took his first aeroplane to go to a training camp for the under-16s Nigerian team just, you know, 2 years ago, and he was scared. because he'd never taken it. These stories are fantastic, and everybody's got one. You know, it's not just Lewis. We can talk even about Madjok and where he comes from and everything. We're a bridge to everybody, and I never stop, and we never stop, trying to get the right information, to bring it up, to educate, to pass on knowledge, but also to talk about culture, to talk about the 54 fabulous countries in this continent, and each player, even Yvonne Vachi from MBB, is the first Zimbabwean player to play in the BAL, and you know, we talk about it, and it's great because it just puts a smile on your face, because we're bringing a lot of joy to the people in that country who've never had a representative from Zimbabwe. So, you know, these stories are really important. So I think it's all about getting your facts, digging deep, agreeing on the storyline, the narrative, if you want to go back to that, Usher, and then delivering it for all of you guys, you know, to have a good time, understanding, and picking up maybe an extra little bit of nugget, you know, that will sort of, you know, just go into our ears and go, ah, I like that, that's nice.
You know, if I could just piggyback on something you said there, just real quick, because you talked about winning and losing, and there was another panelist that talked about we had to teach how to fail. And there's no better teacher in how to come back from failing than sports. So in our first 2 games, our guys lost, and their heads were down. But what do you have to do? You got to get back up. And how do you get back up? By figuring out what you did wrong, trying to figure out how to be a little bit stronger from those weaknesses, and trying to figure out how to reinforce what you do well. So it's just such an amazing learning lesson in sports for athletes, because you're going to win and you're going to lose. And some days you're going to shoot, you're going to be 5 for 12. Some days you might be 1 for 15, but you can't quit shooting. You got to shoot again. So there's no better way to teach than what you teach through sports.
Wow. And since we are here, on the same topic that you yourself brought up, 18 points down. And I was looking at you in the timeout, and you were looking for solutions in there. But can you really take us through, what did you tell your players, and where did you even get the hope at that moment?
Well, I'll go back to Robbie's comment again about staying positive, because in any situation where things aren't going well, you can slide to the negative, and you can think it's not going to happen, it's not going to work. But as a coach, you can't allow your players to ever think you're not going to win. Until the buzzer goes off, you're always trying to stay positive. So we found ourselves in a situation where we were down 18 points, but 3 more minutes in the third quarter. And that's pretty daunting. Looks like we're probably going to lose. And in most situations, you do lose those games. But what we continued to talk about was being positive. Let's figure out what we're doing well. Let's figure out what we're not doing well, and let's try to stop that and focus on the things that we can do better. And as we did that, what we learned was we couldn't erase the 18-point lead all at once. It was one step at a time. And that's how a lot of things are. You get better one step at a time. You don't get better 100% at a time. You get better by 10%, and then 20, and then 40, and then hopefully you reach 100% better. And in that game, I think it was by the fourth quarter where we were down maybe 7 points. And if anybody saw that game, with 2 seconds, we were still down 2. And we were still screaming, but we can still win this game. And our point guard pushed the ball up. He penetrated toward the rim, made a pass out with 2 seconds, and we hit a 3-pointer. And to me, that's the inspiration. That's the inspiration that you always have in life, that you can make it better. You have these obstacles, you have adversity, but you keep working hard, and you always believe that the next day is going to be better.
Well, the BAL Innovation Summit really thanks MBB, because if you had lost that game, I don't know what I would be asking you today. Now, Flo, the character of MBB, we saw that yesterday. You were courtside. But let's talk about South Sudan. That friendly game in London against the USA, when everybody, after the end of the game, could place South Sudan on the African map. Yeah? I hope you're very proud. But how do we get African talent into a pipeline where it's a normal conversation for us to have players in the NBA, in the top leagues across the world?
Well, first of all, thank you for acknowledging that game. It was great to have a game of that magnitude and be involved back home I say home is Ghana, but also London too. I just want to just touch on something before I answer it. So that game, we heard everything that went around on social media. We took it in, we took the disrespect, and we used it as fuel. And then my role as assistant coach is I'm very hands-on with the players on the court, and we have a structured warm-up session. So before the games started, everyone came out. I called all the guys in. I said, look on the other end of the floor. You see the players coming out. Now look at all the fans in here. How many pay attention to us? Not one. I said, use that, feel that, and then we came out. Obviously, we came up short, but that's something that we can use going on in the future. Now, as far as the pipeline for players, one of the major things is you have to be able to compare the talent. So I know as a scout, the best instances are where we have the African players going against US talent, going against other countries in Africa, European talent especially. I'll give an example. I went to the Adidas Next Gen tournament in Serbia. I saw the players there, they were good skill-wise and all that, but we at home, we have the raw athleticism. We have the bodies that are ready to go. We just need a little more of that coaching. So if we are able to develop the coaches, because the players are hungry, and I think Sheikh said that there's no short of talent on the continent already. So we can develop the coaches to put in the systems for our young players to already be up to speed with what they're doing in Europe. Serbia, Croatia, those countries are ahead, France especially, so that when we do play those showcases, and hopefully it's not just a showcase once a year, but it's multiple times a year, that when the global scouting, allegiance sees them, they'll be like, wow, Africa's coming and we're here. So.
Wow, thank you so much for that. If I'm correct, you've been friends with Luol Deng for 28 years, growing up together in London?
Yeah, I met him, funny story, this is how we became friends. He was 12 and I was 15. We were both 6'5", and one of our mutual friends was like, I want you to meet this guy, he's only 12 years old, he's your height. I said, what, where? And we stood back to back to measure the heights, and then since then we've been friends, so simple story.
No, I ask that because we have to really clap for what South Sudan has done. And I say that to give you your flowers, Luol Deng. I don't know if you remember this conversation after the final in 2021. So Luol Deng says someone reached out to him, a friend from Brazil, who was watching the BAL and was surprised that there's an arena like this in Africa. And for that person, it was only the second time that they were watching a live sports event in Africa since the 2010 World Cup in South Africa. So that's how much the incredible BAL is changing narratives globally. And thank you to all of you who do a lot to make it a success. So I'm going to conclude by, the only active BAL player on this panel and perhaps in this room. I want to hone you in really on the BAL. You've played in multiple countries, as I already said in the intro. What has been your BAL experience, and what do you think makes the BAL a desirable destination for international players?
Yeah, it's a great question. My experience has been off the charts. Mentioning, me playing in NBA, obviously the NBA, infrastructure-wise, facility-wise, in my experience has been the best, right? And the BAL has been the closest since that, if it's right there. I've played at the highest levels overseas, like you mentioned, Europe, Australia, and, infrastructure-wise is solid, but there's some places where you'll go where I feel like, not like a professional. We walk into the locker room. I was just playing. I took a quick job to Iraq, Baghdad, and I don't want to base Baghdad based on this, but I walked into our facilities, and it felt like I didn't feel like a professional just because of the cleanliness and stuff. And so that's not the thing here. You know what I mean? That's something that I really appreciate. Just everything, the court. I'm really big on the court and having a solid platform for players to be able to perform and do what we have to do without thinking about, am I going to slip here? If I take off like I want to take off, is this court going to be able to support that? And so that's not something that crosses my mind playing here. And so I think all of that's going to come into a factor, especially, I mean, I've had some guys reach out and say, hey, man, what's the BAL like? You know what I mean? And I always make sure that I'm extremely honest about when players ask, because one, that's my reputation, but two, you know, I want them to come here and be like, well, George said that, and that hurts my word, you know, so I'm extremely honest, and I have been, and there's some solid players asking me about the BAL, and I'm speaking to it. It's like, hey, man, look, especially for some of these players that haven't experienced the NBA, if you want to feel that experience, and first, as far as like the hotels you're going to stay at, the food you'll be eating, you're going to have a bed that your feet may not be hanging off of. This is real stuff, man. This is real stuff. And so this is the little things for me, and I'm just speaking for me, that I really appreciate. And obviously it's an opportunity for me, you know, to experience Africa. This is an untapped continent for me, and now I've tapped into it, and I've just got a teaspoon taste of it, and I'm really happy and thankful that God is aligned the stars for me to be here at this time in my career. So yeah, I think these are the things.
All right, thank you so much. I know you've been playing the golf.
Yes,
How is your
yes.
handicap? What's going on?
I don't have a handicap. I don't have
Fine,
I
we'll
do not
work
have
on
a
something.
handicap, but I will be out there tomorrow. I'm excited. And yeah.
Yeah, for those of you who love golf, you can join him at the Kigali Golf and Villas. Last question to the only NBA champion in this room. Well, if there was something that you could do about transforming the youth talent in Africa, what would it be? And I know you've been to countless Basketball Without Borders camps on the continent and done everything humanly possible. What would that be? What do you dream of? What are you seeing?
Man, there's a lot of things I would love to see happen, but if there was one thing, I would probably say more international exchange. I think the kids in Africa will improve by playing competitively with teams specifically in the U.S. That's how you really kind of can gauge where you are. You can be in South Africa and you can be the best player in South Africa, but that doesn't mean you're a great player, okay? Until you go out of South Africa and you compete against the best. And having a chance to create more international opportunities for all the players, whether it's Nigeria, Cameroon, Morocco, wherever, to go and play these competitions and these big tournaments, specifically around the AAU, these tournaments that happen in different facilities around the country, gives the players a better chance to know where they are and how much better and harder they have to work to get to that top level.